we ever get to hear part 3 of your Phil Ivey story? I've kind of lost track of where I was with it, but I think what I wanted to do was to actually present what happened in the courtroom, which means to say, go over my testimony and also to show you the court documents that I had so that you could see, for example, my expert report and the expert report for the other side. And this is all under UK law. This is not US law. And in the UK, they don't have the same sort of freedom of information we do in this country. Essentially, court documents are not publicly available unless a judge orders them to be released. And I guess you can make a freedom of information request, but there has to be a ruling to release them. At least that's my understanding. I put up a message on the Wizard of Vegas message board asking if anyone knew what the law was in the UK. And that was, I got in, somebody responded via a private message that they had a relative in the UK who was an attorney and they would ask them. And then I think he gave me a message a few weeks later saying this kind of information. I just said, I could have that entirely wrong. But the other point is I sort of read and reviewed my expert report. And in doing so, I realized how much of it I would have to redact. And the reason is that there was all sorts of proprietary information in there that I absolutely could not disclose. So whether it was information about things that had come through the tapes I had reviewed, or my own reading of depositions and my interpretation of those readings, or material I had presented at conferences. So for example, I spoke at a conference in Cambodia in 2012, and I talked about edge sorting long before edge sorting was known to the general public. And but I gave up a lot of details about the conference, for example. And then I conducted a survey, and I had sort of private comments from many individuals in higher up in certain corporations about what their opinions were of edge sorting. So when I actually looked at that document and the sheer scope of what I would have to redact, not only anything that was privileged information in the document, but also in terms of presenting interesting information, things that, in the courtroom proceedings that followed, anything I wanted to present from that, not having the okay to do it. So when I looked at everything sort of put together, this was like, I don't want to be bothered. I mean, it's not that important to the world that my personal experience be known. What I will say is that I thought I did an fantastic job on the expert report, given that I had just a couple days to do it. I had 4 days to do it. And I made a couple of huge mistakes in it. And these were mistakes that would have come to light had I had a month to do it, or any reasonable time, so that it could have been reviewed by myself and any other party who wanted to sort of look it over and ask me questions about it. Now, the expert report is entirely my opinion. They don't get any say on what I think is belongs in the document, but they might ask, Elliot, have you verified this detail? And if I couldn't verify it, then they might say, well, look, we need you to either verify that or consider taking it out. So what actually happened was that there was a critical detail in my expert report that the day before the trial started, I was reading through my expert report again, and I realized that it was wrong, that it was false. And it had to do with the timing of me presenting certain information in certain seminars. And I was off by a year. I had off by one error. And we were going to use that as a critical argument for why Crockfords should have known about this method and been trained on it prior to Phil Ivey being there. So it looked as though Crockford's was negligent based on what I had written. And then I went, holy hell, I'm off by 1 year. And so I, a last minute thing, I had to ask that the document be revised to omit this one paragraph. And so we essentially just contacted the attorneys from the other side, and I believe wrote a letter saying we are rescinding this paragraph from the document. And thank goodness, because if we had left that in there, then they could have used that and just directly attacked me and said, hey, you said this, but it's wrong. And because I took it out, one of the great defensive points that essentially my document had a huge gaping hole in it was removed, so they couldn't attack me on that. But then again, because I was wrong, it also took away one of our strongest points for the Phil Ivey side. So I hope that kind of answers that question for you, at least a little bit. It is kind of it's just too bad is what it is. The whole thing was too bad. I kind of decided I was going to retire after that whole case. And it was just a question of when I could do it. But after the Phil Ivey case, I just felt like honestly, I hated everyone in the industry, and I hated every advantage player, and I hated every lawyer, and I hated every casino. And I got over it pretty quick, but it just left such a bad taste. Such a bad taste that something that was so obviously advantage play would be treated so recklessly by the courts. And, I just hated it, right? So don't know what more to say about that, but the answer is no. You will not be getting part 3 of the Phil Ivey story in a special video, but you could treat this little section of this video like your part 3. And if you want to share it with anyone, you can just say, hey, go to such and such a point in Elliot's monologue towards the end of the video, and you'll get it. So how about that, everyone?